Right now, as you can probably see, I am not alone. I have with me only an international best-selling author and all-round good egg. And also, if anybody has a question about anything extraterrestrial, this is your guy. It's Richard Lawrence. Hello, Richard.
Alan, a real pleasure to see you at last. Yeah,
I
we've
know.
spoken so many times, but not seen each other. Yeah.
Yes, the true horror has now been unfolded. Hey, but first
Likewise.
of all, thank you for talking to me about such
Pleasure.
things. We're going to look at some clips a little bit later on, but a lot of people are saying that the conspiracy theorists have been out in force about obviously COVID and the whole lockdown situation. A lot of people saying it could be international chemical warfare. Other people have said, because there seems to have been an increase in UFO activity, that it could be something brought to the planet because they've been with us a while, but they're not very happy with how we're getting on. What do you say to that, mate?
Well, in terms of the second question, I mean, that really is bad, is poor, isn't it? I mean, if let's start with this. These intelligences, if they wish to do us harm, they could have done it a long, long time ago. They wouldn't need COVID. They'd have no opposition at all of any note from any of our armies, air forces. It would be very easy for them to do. They're obviously peaceful.
Right. Now, on saying that, every now and then you get a story of somebody getting taken up or abducted, and let's face it, about every third American you ever met has been abducted. Do you go along with the abductive stories or not?
I don't rule anything out, but what I would say, because I think I do a lot of psychic research as well and practice, and it's a phenomenon that people mix up, I think, with out-of-body experiences, with sleep state experiences, and because you have a horrific experience which you find difficult, or sometimes people say it's wonderful, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's alien intelligences. Right. Even if they seem to you to look like alien intelligences, there's all sorts of possibilities when you enter that area of sort of out-of-body experiences and lost time and these sorts of things. But I would never rule it out. But what I would say is that these intelligences won't come here and won't harm any individual.
Right. We've heard many a story from, I mean, if you go back far enough, you'll know yourself that in many medieval paintings, in the background, you'll see what is in effect a spacecraft in the top of the painting. And it's a common thing. And a lot of people have said, well, why have they put that there? Well, I presume they put that there because when they were doing the painting, it was there. I can't see any other reason why they would do such a thing. But to go back over such a long period of time, there's so many stories of them, the extraterrestrials watching us and trying to learn what we're all about. The big question always has been, though, we're here. We're hungry, even if they just came to see you and I, Richard. Why haven't they?
Well, there's a lot you said there. And of course, you're right about the medieval paintings. And many of them were, of course, religious paintings. In those days, the majority were, I believe. And the Bible, of course, is absolutely jam-packed full of UFOs, extraterrestrial encounters. And of course, the Star of Bethlehem was a spacecraft. It wasn't a star. You don't get a star hovering over a stable, but they didn't have that kind of lingo. I mean, Galileo couldn't even get it through in the sort of Middle Ages. He couldn't even talk about the Earth revolving around the sun and so on. Never mind earlier days. So they had no comprehension really of what a star was. They were just describing objects moving in the sky. And they were witnessed in the Old Testament and the New, and then you can go to the Hindu scripts and so on. But coming to your question of why don't they make contact, they have made contact to certain individuals through history. They have a plan. It's a subtle plan. It's a long-term plan. I think one of the things we have to get away from is the view that we know what they would do, because you hear people saying things like, if they existed, they would land openly, they would prove themselves, they'd take over the radio stations, starting with night owls, and then they take over all sorts of things. But that's what we think they would do. That's a terrestrial person saying what extraterrestrials would do. By
Right.
definition, they have an alien psychology, and that's not what they do. We have to look at what they actually do, which is to be seen, to be sighted. There have been certain individual encounters. I think the most remarkable of modern times was Dr. George King, who I knew very, very well, who founded the Etheria Society. I suggest people investigate him, because no point going to governments. They've thrown in the towel. They've given up. So you need to come to people who claim contacts. Now, not every person who claims contact is genuine, and doesn't mean they're lying. They might believe it's genuine. You have to, I'm afraid it's a discrimination tile. You have to sort it out. I've had the opportunity to look at the claims of Dr. King, which are unprecedented. It's the oldest international UFO contact organization in the world, and it's been going consistently, and there's 43 years of contacts. There really is nothing to compare with it. But I don't expect you to believe me. Investigate it, judge it, and you do that with others as well. He's not saying there's no one else who's been contacted, but I'm afraid there are people out there who are deluded, I have to use that word, and there are people out there who are deliberately falsifying it. They think it might be a profitable thing. They'll find out that it isn't.
No, for sure. Thank you for that.
There's not a lot to be made out of this.
The other thing, though, that I would like to get into is that I just hope that any of these extraterrestrials that are amongst us don't see any of our movies about aliens, because we haven't given them any kind of good press since the 50s, really, have we?
It's absolutely pathetic, really. I'm sorry to have to say that. The governments are pathetic. We know they've lied for a long time, and now this year they seem to have given up, Britain and America anyway. The president of America is even musing about whether they're real, as though he obviously doesn't know, if we can believe that. And then the public, I'm afraid, of course, one of the greatest weapons of those people who want to cover up UFOs is apathy. They're relying on apathy. And of course, the information that's come out of governments has been carefully timed, I believe. It's come out in the middle of the COVID crisis in the hopes it won't get noticed. It won't pass the purview of night owls, but lots of journalists haven't discovered it. And that's the intention, I'm quite sure. But it does rely on people taking an interest. This is a very, very significant, important matter, because every step we take towards them, they will take two towards us. That's been proved to me over and over again.
Right. Okay. Let's take a look at something that the world was party to, and not so very long ago we saw some footage. A lot of TV news people told us what they thought it was. I'd much prefer you to tell us what it actually is. Tony, if you could play that clip for us, I'd like it.
Yeah. Wow, bro. There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Look at that thing, dude. That's not our LNS, though, is it? It's not. That is an LNS, dude. Well, if there's, look at that thing. It's rotating.
Now, Tony, if you could just stop it there, if you don't mind. Richard, talk us through that first clip, if you could, because here's something traveling at great speed against the wind and able to rotate. Now, we don't have any planes that can do that.
No, and that's been admitted now, which is a good thing. It comes out of the US Navy. There are 3 clips, and I think the first one is the earliest one, but there are 3. So which order they're in, I'm not 100% sure. But the first one was filmed in 2004, and the second 2 were filmed in 2015. The first one's been sort of in the domain of the public since about 2007, and I believe the other 2 came in the domain about 2017, and people have talked about them. They're often known as the Tic Tac UFOs because they're sort of oblong shapes. Used to be in the old days, they used to be called cigar shaped. You've had all these flying saucers, which you don't hear much now, which is the disc shape. But the important thing is these were sighted by fighter pilots, and the first one, the fighter pilot, is absolutely adamant they're not of this world. They have flight capacities, abilities to maneuver, increase speed, way above anything in the American or any other inventory. And in fact, there's a man called Elizondo who was working in the Pentagon for some time, I think up till about 2012, I believe, leading an investigation into UFOs within the Pentagon, who said that this is just one. I mean, there's better evidence than this, he said, but there's no doubt whatsoever that these are extraterrestrial. These craft that are visiting us are extraterrestrial. Because one of the excuses the Pentagon used to come up with, well, all these things you're seeing, the reason we lied about them is because they're really ours. Well, they've dropped that now. They know they aren't. And what they've really done is put them out in the domain. They've admitted it, and I'll give them the, due credit for that this month, and said, well, here they are. Yes, they are genuine US Navy footage. We don't know what they are. And the British government's doing a similar thing. So we really don't know. We have no opinions. We're not interested. It's not our field. And they've basically left the field. So you now have to really turn to people like the Aetherius Society if you want the answers.
Right, great. Now, if you could bring that second one in, because the second one is a speedy little rascal, and they even have difficulty registering it. They see it, then they've got to catch it.
Nickel 6-1 Tango Logic. Oh, got it! Woohoo! Roger. There's troubleshooting. Did you box moving target? No, I took an auto charge. Oh, okay. Oh my gosh, dude. Wow.
Keep playing it, Tony. Let's see this one too. And our thanks to the Daily Telegraph for these pictures as well. They're the ones that put them out there that we could use. And there's a close-up of whatever this thing is. We believe an extraterrestrial craft. So, Richard, looking at these, it just begs belief that people haven't sussed it, because there's still people going, it's just fiction. It's just people making up stories and such. And yet there's a bottomless pit of information from 4,000 years before the birth of Christ, right the way up to the present day. And it's frustrating, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't want to be rude, but I don't find it highly intelligent to say they don't exist, or to dismiss it out of hand when you haven't investigated it. Those are the people who said to Galileo, no, the sun revolves around us. And that's what happened to the man. He had to recant. And you've got it today. And as I say, it's not highly intelligent. If a person says, look, I don't really know, which I think, to be fair, is the most, according to opinion polls, the current view. I think most people believe in aliens now. And most people believe in invisible life now, including scientists, which they didn't used to. I mean, when Dr. King started, he went into the public in 1955, in January, in a very conservative Britain, just after the war, and spoke not only about UFOs, but invisibility, their ability to disappear, reappear, move through different levels, and for aliens to live in non-physical bodies. So now that's fully accepted. It's in the remit of astrophysics and theoretical physics. The world has changed immensely. But for people to dismiss it out of hand, I think we have to say it's foolish.
Yeah, the one way that I've tried to explain this to people, and I'm sure you've had many chat in a pub or a club or over dinner somewhere where somebody's gone, Richard, come on, you're a sensible fella. And they'll give you whatever they believe. And you feel that slippery slope of having hell's bells. The next 45 minutes is going to be this tennis match. But with respect to the whole aliens being amongst us, but where are they? Why can't we see them and all of the rest of it? If you think that in the room where you are, in the room where I am, we've got 5,000 radio signals, 1,000 telephone signals, televisual signals, satellite signals, and they're all in a different wavelength somewhere.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's what life is really like, yet we're just on one of them.
We're a tiny, tiny fraction of the light spectrum. You know, the visible light spectrum is minuscule compared to the invisible light spectrum. And then when you look at mass, I think it's generally agreed by NASA that it's now 4 or 5% of the universe is actually visible, is actually detectable by us anyway, not necessarily by the alien intelligences. And, this is, I suppose, progress. In fact, I saw a NASA website not so long ago, and they were theorizing about it being the mystical fifth element of ancient Greece, which, by the way, is Aether, ether, after which we're named back in the 1955. So they're moving in our direction, I would say, and this is a good thing. I think it's fine to say I don't know. I haven't investigated it. I've got an open mind, but I do think it's an important matter, because these intelligences can save our world, and I believe they are in some respects. But they work in a very subtle way. They don't force everybody to change. They don't want to rob us of our greatest thing, which is experience, by taking away our free will. So they're working in a very subtle manner, but I would say extremely even today, as I'm talking to you, actually, there's a disaster in India and Bangladesh. You may have come across it. And in the Aetherius Society, we're working directly, and were yesterday too, not just in this country, but in America and in New Zealand, in sending energy in cooperation with beings from other planets to try and help in that situation. And we're doing this all the time. It's a matter of helping save the world, not a matter of sort of an intellectual discussion about the pros and cons of one sighting. I mean, that footage you actually showed has, before the US Navy admitted it, there were plenty of people out there debunking it and saying, oh, this isn't real footage. It doesn't come from the US Navy. Well, it does. No,
absolutely. I'm just thinking, though, Richard, because you've done exceedingly well in a field, the psychic field especially, where we're talking, I'm not going to bring ghosts into it, but it's all kind of part of this, of a similar parcel. Yeah. But this whole idea that we can, how best can I describe it? For years, our grandparents have said the power of positive thought, the power of prayer, the power of focusing your mind. And a lot of people say, well, I focused my mind a lot, but nothing still happened. But we're not doing it right. And there's ways you can learn it. And that's precisely what you've been doing with India.
Yes, that, and also, and working with beings from other worlds, because the Aetherius Society isn't just about, our beliefs and our teachings. It's direct cooperation. And in fact, throughout a long period through this COVID, we've been doing an online service every single day of sending energy, positive energy out, and people can join in. Hundreds of people a day are joining in with this. And I believe it's making a massive difference. I mean, things are not sorted, but they are better than they were 4 weeks ago. Let's put it in several countries at least. And this does make a difference, as well as the fantastic work people are doing on the ground, of course, the volunteers and all of that. All of that does make a massive difference. In terms of psychic things, as you mentioned there, it's very relevant, actually, to understanding extraterrestrial life, because our belief is, I often find people in this movement, they talk about distant constellations out there and Pleiades or whatever it might be. But actually, the most relevant solar system is the one we're in, to us. And there is life, we believe, and this is the main focus of the Aetherius Society, in this solar system. It doesn't mean we'd necessarily detect it, though, if we went to Mars, or even see it. In the same way, there is life, and this is something I have experience of. It's a much lower level than Dr. King's mediumship, but I've had many contacts, as have many others, actually. Maybe yourself, I don't know, but with people who've passed on. They're not physically alive, but they certainly still exist.
Sure, no question about it. Hey, well, Richard, thank you very much for that. What are you working on at the present moment? That people are you in the middle of another book, or what are you doing?
Well, this book, which I'll show you, UFOs, the Extraterrestrial Message, has
just by chance, you're sitting on a pile of them.
It's not a coincidence, gosh, who put that there? But anyway, it's just come out in a new edition. UFOs and the Extraterrestrial Message.
Fantastic. Now, the thing is, a lot of people say, well, you've had Richard on the show before. Yeah, because if you really are as close to these aliens as as you believe and that you have proven over the years, I want to keep in with you, because if you're keeping in with them and I keep in with you, we're going to be in a good place.
Well, I'll tell you, I want to keep in with you, Alan. So that's a deal then. We're on a good footing there.
Absolutely. And hey, Richard, thank you so much for sharing some time.
For inviting
we get
me.
some calls about it now, I'm sure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.